everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is super cool to say. I really like this whole YouTube thing. This is my third video, and today I'm really excited because I have something extra special. Today I'm going to be beta reading my friend Logan's manuscript. I've been slacking off on beta reading, and basically what beta reading is one of my favorite things to do. It's basically reading someone else's manuscript or their draft or their work in progress and making edits to line level issues or things I just think could help clear up the prose a little bit. And because I've been writing for a long time and reading for a long time, this is something that comes pretty naturally to me. But you'll see Logan's a really good writer, and he's one of those people who picks things up really fast. He hasn't been writing for that long, but he writes as if he's been doing it 2 years consistently at least. He's one of those people who really has not a lot of difficulty in putting images in his head into words, so I'm really excited to show you guys that and show you how I go about editing small, tiny little writer errors, and hopefully you guys can learn something along the way. Alright, cool, let's get to it.
Right here we're on the second sentence, or the first sentence of the second paragraph, which says, "But Castile didn't consider his status to be a detriment rather than his greatest asset." There's not anything necessarily wrong with this sentence. However, in writing prose level, you want to typically, especially if you're trying to filter the experience through the main character's perspective, you want to say what they do notice, not what they don't notice. So you can turn this around. Something along those lines. Logan can add his own stylistic cues to that. Evidently, Tavoktan was in the flashiest of places. It was easy to stand out. Castile loved the ones who stood out. Okay, so I feel like this is something we already know. Okay, so I said this sentence kind of confused me, but after I read it a second time, I understood what he meant. It's necessary to tell the author themselves when you get tripped up over a certain section, because the author themselves, when they're reading it back, doesn't notice it. They wrote it. The rhythm falls into place in their mind, so I'm just letting the author know that this didn't quite make sense to me and giving him an option to change it. So I think his goal was to characterize Tavoktan as, a town with homogenous people. And he kind of said that earlier, a small ranching town, so it's implied. But I added a piece of imagery. You could say how all townspeople carried the same ragged, worn look, or how the light had dimmed from their eyes. And so this makes it easier when he transitions into the next part, whether it be a foreign accent, a slight limp, or even a new pair of shoes. If Castile sensed different, he pounced. So this sentence, it says the woman was likely in town for the trading fair and that she was bound to have some money. I think he can technically delete this. This is a big tip, is redundant information can be deleted. So if you look closely, you can sense that Castile knows this woman's new. And they before mentioned this festival coming up that's like a trading thing. So we can kind of infer already that the woman's here, that she's new and she has money based on her earrings, and she's probably in for the trading fair. So right now I'm replacing this section right here. Castile chatted, keeping a watchful eye on the woman. I just substituted that with keeping one eye on the woman because I feel like that allows the reader to make that same inference without telling them. So the reader has more active experience. This goes under the tip showing versus telling. I'm gonna delete this section right here. I don't think you need another dialogue tag. Also, I don't think you need spoke. I think you can just say said, or any words other than spoke. Like we have here chastised, and spoke is here, chatted. You don't necessarily need those words. They kind of take the reader out of the experience because they focus on these exact specific verbs, when in fact, if something isn't really remarkable in the way it's said, I would just go for said or asked. I'd keep chastised. I'd even go as far as to delete chatted, but at this point it's kind of part of the writing style, so I'm okay with it. Okay, so there's this thing here that Logan uses, noticed, So we know that Castile is watching the woman. We know that he's noticing that. Technically, Logan doesn't even have to say that for us, the audience, to get that idea. So I'm going to highlight this and create an edited sentence to the right. So I suggested instead, the woman enters the town bookstore, or entered the town bookstore, the hem of her lace dress collecting dirt, such a fragile material white lace, with a function none other than to boast of its own expense. I kind of thought that Castile has a sort of disdain so far for the rich people, obviously stealing from them. So this is important to characters Castile, and just to add some imagery, instead of saying he watched the woman enter the town book and noticed the color of her dress, this gives a very, very distant kind of feeling to it, because it feels like we as the reader are watching as Castile watches somebody else. It's like remove two people. So Logan does a really good job voicing the character's thoughts and conflict through dialogue. A beginner writer might just dump a paragraph of introspection, and there's nothing explicitly wrong with that, but I feel like it's more naturally stated through the dialogue. So here you can see, she might not have done anything to me, but that lady has equally done nothing for me. Dear poor Galton, does it not anger you that they come here and parade in their jewels while you waste away peddling cakes for a living? So I substituted this whole bit with a sentence of my own, and there's nothing explicitly wrong with this sentence. However, a disappointed look was the old man's response. Kind of just leaves the disappointment up to the reader to formulate. I personally prefer more vivid imagery, such as Galton's brows pulled together in that all too familiar way to send a pang of guilt in Castile's stomach. This has the opportunity to characterize Castile furthermore as someone who doesn't really want to disappoint Galton, as well as the fact that he's disappointed Galton before. It does so in fewer words, and I think with vivider imagery. So you don't always have to illustrate emotions with expressions and body language. You can illustrate it in different ways, but typically you don't want to outright state it. You want to show, not tell. So this goes in the show, not tell category as well. So I feel like there's a lot of repetitiveness in this statement. The quaint structure leans slightly to the left as the ground in Timbuktu was extremely uneven. I feel like that's pretty redundant. However, it kind of bleeds into the next sentence. If the bookstore had been a pub, it would have fallen over by now. The old wood couldn't stand the ruckus. I feel like that just kind of all says the same thing. Timbuktu is old. It's beat up. So I substituted it with this instead. The quaint structure leans slightly to the left, featuring like half the buildings in Timbuktu. We can delete this little segment right here because we already know that Castile doesn't believe in gods due to him rolling his eyes at the divinity and him making the sarcastic comment earlier on about the god of weather. In this paragraph right here, it's interesting that Castile, because this is filtered from Castile's point of view, so it's interesting that Castile would even make the observation that the store wasn't anything extravagant, but had a quality collection of books, especially when qualified after saying not that Castile would know. It feels like just an info dump that doesn't really have any place here and feels more distant because the narrator explicitly said that Castile wouldn't even know. So I would delete it. This sentence as it is, Castile spotted his target holding a stack of what looked to be children's books, his eyes drawn to the gem bracelets on her wrists. That makes good sense. It kind of tells us what Castile is drawn to, the gem bracelets. He's a thief. Makes sense. However, the fact that it continues with Castile found the choice to be odd, but he wasn't in any position to judge. The last thing that he could remember reading was a recipe. This talks about the books. Castile finds the choice of books to be odd. However, it ends with the gem bracelets. So I think we need to rearrange this sentence to something a little different. So I substitute the sentence with, the woman's gem bracelets caught the light, the kind of insert stone name here. You might have a fantasy name to put there that would fetch a good price. Attached to those bracelets was a creamy brown skin, holding a stack of what appeared to be children's books. Now, I don't know if attached is necessarily the right word, but it shows Castile's focus on the woman's gems, just like it did before, and then the woman is secondary to that. And then it lines up and bleeds into the second sentence, connecting really nicely. Again, right here, I'm substituting the telling of Castile loathing sweet foods with a passion, with the showing of him perceiving the sugar as sickly sweet. You can do this in different ways as well, but it gives the reader a more active understanding of Castile and how he loathes sweet foods without the author explicitly saying something like that. So, Logan has really, really good dialogue skills. So let's look at this real quick. Dear gods, I'm so sorry, Castile fretted, making sure to keep his face down. This right here shows the making sure to keep his face down shows that he's first and foremost a thief and worries for his own safety. Oh, it's no worry, the woman laughed. It's just one dress that doesn't like it at home. Castile gave the dress one stub for taking note of its silk quality. That single dress cost more than his entire wardrobe. He boxed the irritation and shoved it down inside of him, making a motion to pick up his own drop book. So you can see just from this small interaction a lot about Castile. He knows when to hold his tongue, even if he's annoyed and he's angered at the injustices of this world that I feel like will be touched on later on. And so far, this is doing a really good job to set up Castile's internal conflict, his wants, his needs. I edited what once was Castile stood there stunned. That collision wasn't planned. And I changed it into Castile stood there stunned, dumb for a moment. I made that choice because it was kind of redundant saying that the collision wasn't planned, and I also added some characterization by saying he stood there stunned dumb for a moment, and dumb has a negative connotation, and no character, especially one like Castile, we already know who's observant and watchful, would like to be considered dumb, so you can see that he's already disappointed in his actions without me having to explain it.
Hey guys, so I realized I forgot to film an outro, but that was pretty much the video. I hope you really enjoyed and learned some editing tips to use when you're editing your manuscripts and what to look for. Again, showing, not telling, using imagery to create a more active reading experience for your audience, and so on, as well as cutting out redundant information. I think that was pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and thank you again to Logan for letting me use your manuscript. Okay, cool. Thank you guys. Bye.